Okay, last lesson here, 5.4. So this is going to be a relatively easy lesson. You just got to be a little careful as always. Think just a little bit. We're talking about area of these shapes. Now, we're adding an area of a triangle in here, even though we're done with triangles, just so that we're doing area all at once. We know that we've been looking at quadrilaterals, parallelograms, four-sided shapes. And so you have some formulas in your notes that I kind of want just to highlight so that you see them. When we have a square, part of the reason why we call that little 2 there, we call this s squared, is because when you're finding the area of a square, it's a side times a side. And because those sides are the same, it's just s squared, right? It's a square. That means s times s. So if you need to clarify that, if you forgot that, that means the side length times the side length, right? S squared. So you could plug in s times s in your calculator. For example, if this was 4 and this was 4, it's a square, so all the sides are the same, you would just get 4 times 4. Or you could plug in 4 squared and get that same answer. So that's our area of a square. Area of a rectangle is technically the same thing. It's still the 2 numbers that make up the base and the height. Here, the base and the height are just the same numbers. So they say s times s. But you could use base times height here as well. So base is just our flat side right here, our height. It doesn't matter which is which, though. You can switch them. That's going to give us our area. For a parallelogram, careful when you have these problems, the base and height is always straight up and down. We don't talk about any slants being our height, right? Height is always just straight up and down like this. So this piece here is not considered the height. Same thing for a triangle. Triangle formula is 1/2 base times height. It's actually because it makes up half of a rectangle, and that's why. The height is always the straight up and down one. So you would not call this piece a height. It has to be straight up and down. So just got to pay attention to what numbers they give you. We only need the flat one and the height that's perpendicular to it. So we're going to kind of fly through these because they're pretty quick. These formulas, again, are pretty simple. All you got to do basically is find the formula, identify the pieces, and plug in. So let's go ahead and look at this first one. So first off, what shape is this? It is a triangle, right? So that's your first step because, again, you've got some different shapes here. It's a triangle. So we're going to use the triangle formula for area. So go ahead and copy that over. I'll give you a second. Area formula is for a triangle 1/2 base times height. Don't forget that 1/2, otherwise you're going to get these wrong. So all I got to do is plug in, this is 1/2 times my base times my height. So looking right here, we're going to assume this is a right angle. We should know that. What is my base and my height? Well, it doesn't matter which is which. We would technically call 8 the base because we call the one that's flat the base. And we would call this one the height because it's straight up and down, right? So this is just 1/2 times 8 times 5. So go to your calculator. You need half of 8 times 5. What is that? Well, 8 times 5 is 40, and then half, that's 20. So this is 20 centimeters squared, we'd call that. If you guys remember units for area, this is centimeters times centimeters. That gets us centimeters squared. However, in Canvas, you would just put that A is 20. And that's it. Pretty simple. Identify the shape, look at your notes, identify the formula, and then plug in. Okay, so try this one. What is this shape? This is also a triangle. So we're going to use our same area formula as before. So take 2 seconds, plug it in. Should take you literally 2 seconds to plug in the calculator. What's your base? What's your height? And then you're good to go. Well, our base is 15. Our height is 4. So I'm going 1/2 multiplied by 15 multiplied by 4. I need to do this in the calculator myself. Where is my calculator? Whoops. Grab one real quick. I got one. Okay, but again, it's 15 times 4, and then whatever half of that is. So that's 60, so that would end up being 30. Again, technically 30 centimeters squared, we call this, because that's area, right? But in Canvas, you would just put 30. You wouldn't type centimeters squared. Okay, so now I have a new shape here. So see if you can identify, what is this shape called? This isn't a triangle. What is this one? This one's going to be a parallelogram. Parallelogram. Now, it's the same formula as a rectangle, though. You just got to be careful because its area is, what's the formula for this? Look at your notes, parallelogram. Base times the height. Now, again, base is the kind of horizontal one, typically, is what we're looking at. So 24. And then height is always straight up and down. So this is the height here, right? We don't talk about the height being the slanted one. So this is just purely 24 times 6. So let's try that real quick. Should get 144. And again, we're dealing in centimeters, so this is centimeters squared. That's all that would go in Canvas, though, is just the 144. So I want you to try the next two. We have 4 and we have 5. Identify the shape, identify the formula, find the area. Go and give it a shot. Okay, so on 4, this is a rectangle. So if I look to my area formulas, that's once again just base times height. Here's my base, here's my height. Literally, that's all I had to do is 5 times 13. Should be 65, but let me double check. Oh yeah, it's 65. Yeah. So since this is in feet, again, technically my units are going to be feet squared, but 65 is all that would go into Canvas. Okay, well, this is already telling us what the shape is. This is just a square. Now, again, you could technically use base times height here. You would just have to understand what the base is. The formula that we have for this is side squared, and the reason why is, what's my base right here if this is a square? It's also 16, right? If I've got 16 here, I've got 16 here because this is a square. So you can think base times height or side squared because it means the same thing. 16 times 16, which is my base times my height, equals 16 squared. That's the definition of when we square something. So 16 times 16, we got 256. And now we're in inches, so again, we are inches squared, but we just need to put the 256 in Canvas. So again, don't get confused by a square. Don't think it's anything special. It is still base times height. It just so happens that the base and height are the same. Now, example 6, you will have a question like this that's a little bit different. Notice they give you the area here. They're not asking you to find the area. They give it to you. And we want to find what one side length would have to be. Now, we're going to kind of work backwards now, right? It's like we're given this answer, and we need to find what the side length would need to be. So we are given the area, right? Now, this again is a square. So what's our formula for area of a square? I'm going to go ahead and say this as side squared. Again, it could be base times height, but we need the understanding that the sides are the same. And that's going to allow us to solve this problem. If A is 225, I can plug it in right here. And I can find my side length, which I can go ahead and make this one more replacement here. My side length is represented by x, just so we're understanding that. So then we need to solve for x. So we need to find something that multiplies by itself to get me 225. Now, it's been a while since we've had to do this, but if you guys can recall, the opposite of a square is a square root. That's this button on the calculator. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. And that's going to allow us to find a number that multiplies by itself to get me 225. So take a second to plug that in. You should know where the square root button is by now. Okay, we got x equals 15. So 15 times 15 would get me the 225. So be careful because sometimes you will have questions like that. If you're given the area, you're going in reverse. But go ahead, this assignment shouldn't be terribly difficult as long as you're paying attention to what's the shape, what's the formula, what am I plugging into the formula. That's it.